So I've got good news, everybody, which is that Daniel Penny is not going to prison.
Good.
There you go.
Excellent.
Hooray.
Justice has been served.
It turns out that thing that he did, which was defending the other people around him, was not illegal in New York yet, and so he will not be punished for it. And this was after quite a long trial, after a lot of trouble initially with the jury selection, because there was the worry that they weren't going to get jurors who would be able to empathise with the situation that he was in. And this is after the jury were left at a deadlock as well regarding one of the two charges, which was second-degree manslaughter, which the prosecutor, a woman called Daphne Yoren, decided to drop, which seemed to have been, for the prosecution, the fatal flaw. Because that left the jury at a deadlock, but on the charge of homicide, intentional homicide, well, it was obvious. It was obvious that clearly he wasn't trying to murder.
Well, after he left the scene was when he died. So if it was intentional homicide, it's a bit of a tough sell, isn't it?
It certainly was, especially given some of the other information that seemed to have come to light during the trial. But I'll go over that in a moment. So they deliberated for 5 days before declaring him not guilty. Even that is a bit long.
That's ludicrous given the interview footage that we've seen of Penny cooperating with the police officers, eyewitnesses saying that he saved us, the people that helped him restrain Jordan Neely on the ground because Neely had been walking up and down as a complete schizophrenic homeless drug addict saying, I'm going to kill people, I'm going to go to jail, I don't care. Should never have been prosecuted in the first place, but the fact that it was brought to trial should have been an open and shut case.
Well, it's an Alvin Bragg prosecution. He's the one who brought the case forward. I'm just going to have to remind myself. Daphne Yoren, I think, is an assistant DA, so she was the one prosecuting it. So this was, as you would expect in New York, entirely politically motivated because it was a white man seemingly attacking a black man, therefore it had to be racially aggravated, therefore there is no excuse for it, so we had to bring it forward. The problem is that as the law still stands, turns out you're allowed to defend other people.
Do you think that the reason that they deliberated for so long is the fact that after Floyd, they thought, well, if we don't make this guy take the fall for this, they're going to burn New York to the ground?
Possibly, but I don't think the energy is there anymore because there has been some protest, but nothing on the scale of George Floyd, especially because the footage of the incident came out basically straight away, whereas the police footage of the George Floyd incident was held back for almost 9 months, if I remember correctly. I think it came out in December of 2020 or maybe even January of 2021. So there was a lot of time where we didn't see that footage, and the only footage that was available of George Floyd's death was the one that initially got released on social media, where it looked as though Derek Chauvin was kneeling on his neck. Of course, there are a lot of other comparisons to make with the George Floyd case as well, particularly the actual reason that Jordan Neely died. But I'll get to that in a moment. In this BBC article, they also mention that Mr. Neely's father, Andre Zachary, was removed from the court after the verdict because he began shouting, and you could hear chants of "no justice, no peace" heard from outside from protesters. Despite this, the actual courtroom supposedly applauded after the verdict was read out, and Zachary, Neely's father again, said, "It hurts. It really, really hurts. What's going to happen to us now? I've had enough of this."
Why was Mr. Zachary not around to save his son from being a vagrant drug addict on the streets of New York? And why was he not married to Jordan Neely's mother, who, as far as I understand it, Jordan Neely's schizophrenic trauma was onset by the fact that his mum was murdered by an abusive ex-boyfriend and her body was left by the side of the road in a suitcase?
Yes, that was when he was 13 years old. There's not much that I've seen reported on Jordan Neely's father's involvement in his life after that, because most of the rest of the information that we know about Jordan Neely is his trouble. Well, is one, as they mentioned in this BBC article, that he was a Michael Jackson impersonator who performed in Times Square. Oh, well done to him.
Well, he died of a drug overdose, so he's doing a pretty good Michael Jackson impression.
Certainly he is, but the only other things that I've seen consistently reported about him was all of his run-ins with the law. Like, again, they say in this article, it is one sentence after another in the same little paragraph. It's quite funny, sadly. Mr. Neely was a Michael Jackson impersonator who performed in Times Square. Ah, how nice. He had dozens of previous arrests on charges such as evading fares, theft, and assaults on 3 women.
upstanding character.
Yeah, so most of what we know is about that. Also, his time spent in psychiatric institutions, which he was actually supposed to be in when this incident took place, but he had gone in, I think spent 3 weeks in there, and then just walked out.
Mm-hmm.
Just walked out, and then he was able to harass people in public and before getting himself in this situation. Now, regarding the actual cause of death, they mention of it in this New Yorker article. And I'll read through a bit of this here. So the defense did its best to discredit the determination made by Cynthia Harris, one of the city's medical examiners, of the cause of Neely's death, which she put as compression of the neck via chokehold. If Neely hadn't died from Penny's chokehold, but from another cause, any other cause, then a reasonable jury would have no choice but to acquit the defendant. Stephen Razor, one of the defense lawyers, who later referred to Penny's chokehold as a civilian restraint, which sounds like a pretty reasonable characterization to me, pointed out that Harris made her opinion on the cause of death before the toxicology report, the molecular genetic report, the anthropology report, and the neuropathology report had been reviewed.
So she watched the video.
She watched the video and said, oh, he choked him out. That's why.
So that's like the family coroner who made the verdict on the George Floyd case, and then the report, the actual autopsy came out, and he had 0 bruising and compression on his neck or muscles. He had a high lethal dose of fentanyl in his
3
system.
times, yeah.
Well, let's hear Harris's explanation as to why. So Razor asked her, how could you determine whether the results of those tests were unimportant before knowing what the results of those tests were? She responds, no toxicological result would have changed my opinion. He could have come back with, enough fentanyl to put down an elephant, and I would have just thought that he walked into the subway with a huge amount of fentanyl in his system and then put in a chokehold in which he died. What? So it doesn't matter. The evidence... The evidence and the logical inference you can take from that does not matter. He died of a chokehold because I say he did.
That's astounding you'd even admit that.
It's ridiculous.
Like, we know how it operates. We know that this was just an attempt to have Daniel Penny be the avatar of straight white men in America and be put on trial to condemn America.
As an avatar, given the results, he's a pretty good one.
You mean highly competent, heroic, and good looking? Yeah, it works. But the fact that this woman just said the thing.
She shouldn't be anywhere near this case. She should be bashing rocks together.
Preferably in a prison for what
she should not be making any qualified decisions in a case like this, or at the original point where she was deciding what was the cause of death. Clearly, she does not have the reasonable, unbiased judgment to make that decision, right? Because she just said, I decided it because I decided it.
She deliberately tried to send this man to prison.
Basically. The defense attorneys, for their part, brought forward a different doctor, Dr. Satish Chundru, who argued that the cause of Neely's death was the combined effects of the street drug K2, so he was high on this street drug. I've not heard of it before. I assume it's some maybe fentanyl or opioid.
No, K2 is a mountain.
Also of acute schizophrenic psychosis and physical exertion, which all contributed to a death by sickle cell crisis in which one's red blood cells clump together and stop moving, leading in this instance to asphyxiation.
Sickle cell is something that affects black people exclusively, isn't it?
Yes. Mm-hmm. So that seems like a much more reasonable explanation for what happened, given that we can see in the footage that was released by the police that Jordan Neely was still breathing after Daniel Penny released the chokehold. In fact, we could see from the original footage.
Well, the police themselves
he was still breathing.
Didn't want to give mouth-to-mouth to Jordan Neely because they knew he was a homeless drug addict and didn't want to catch HIV.
Yeah, that was the reason given by
fair enough to them as well. One of the things they teach you when you do first aid is if you don't like the look of the person, you're not legally obligated to give them mouth-to-mouth, which I think is a very sensible rule.
They also tried using chest compressions to keep him alive, and he died later on after being removed from the scene. So why would they have used chest compression based CPR if he wasn't alive?
And why would you even assume at this point that Penny had much at all to do with the fact that he died? Because if it was physical exertion, yeah, you could say that being held in that, but he was already physically exerting himself, very agitated, very animated from what they say. So who's to say that the physical exertion he was putting himself under wouldn't have contributed to the same effect anyway? As again with George Floyd, where clearly from the police footage that we saw after it was released, he had already begun foaming from the mouth due to a combination of methamphetamine and fentanyl.
He was in a state of excited delirium before he asked to be put on the floor.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, he refused to get in the car, didn't he? That was his choice to do that. Then he started kicking people.
So thankfully, Penny seems to have got more of a fair hearing than Derek Chauvin did, and as a result, he celebrated by doing the only thing that he could: straight to the bar. Let's get a drink down as lads. And it's actually quite wholesome to see. It's genuinely very nice to see him like this, because the whole way through the trial proceedings and the media hysteria up to that point, he'd done a very good job of remaining stoic and remaining measured and presenting himself very well. And now you get to see him just, you know...
How you feeling?
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
He's feeling good. He's feeling good. He's feeling good.
What's up?
We're
Come together.
Yeah.
How's it going? How's it feel?
Feels great. He's finally got the justice he's deserved.
Did you think it was going to happen?
Sorry?
Yeah, people were making the joke that, yep, the first thing a free Irishman does, straight to the bar.
Fair point.
Is he Irish?
I think he is, possibly.
He's part Italian.
Well, part Italian, he's North Italian.
He's totally justified in celebrating the fact that his life was not deliberately ruined by race communists in the American government.
Completely. But another mark in favour of the character of Daniel Penny and the fact that he is just in general a good and honourable person is this interview that he did with Fox News, where he was asked whether he would do it again. And he responded like this.
I mean, I'm not a confrontational person. I don't really extend myself. I think this type of thing is very uncomfortable. All this attention and limelight is very uncomfortable. And I would prefer without it. I didn't want any type of attention or praise, and I still don't. Mm-hmm. The guilt I would have felt if someone did get hurt, if he did do what he was threatening to do, would never be able to live with myself. And I'll take 1 million court appearances and people calling me names and people hating me just to keep one of those people from getting hurt or killed.
A man lives by his ability to justify himself to his own conscience.
You really can't say more for the man than just to watch that clip and see that it doesn't matter to him what the consequences were. He was helping people and he was keeping people safe. So that was the thing at the forefront of his mind, and that's still the thing at the forefront of his mind. So congratulations to him for that. Some of the reactions have been good. So Count Dankula, good friend of Justice Dankula, announced that as a result we're having White Boy Christmas. So that was a good one. And live footage from the streets of New York, where New Yorkers have realised that it is now safe to traverse the streets if you're white again.
That's MGMT in their college days, isn't it?
It might be.
It definitely is. I recognise
it. Might be, but they were all out
Kids.
on the street saying, "It's safe again, lads. We've done it."
But be warned. The Penny case will not stop them, because the Carl Rittenhouse case didn't stop them.
No, I know. I know. But there was also other aspects of the case, which was this Daphne Yoren character.
She looks like she drank from the wrong cup at the end of Indiana Jones 3.
I certainly agree with you there, but she became a bit of a character in this in herself, if only because of the quite marked comparisons between how Daniel Penny looked and how she looked, but also the Daily Mail reported on some of her previous cases that she'd taken care of. For instance, this one, if I scroll down, where she had said in 2019 she had asked for a reduced punishment for Matthew Lee, a 57-year-old man, after he snuck up on a former Lemon College professor, Dr. Young Kun Kim, 87 years old, and killed him over $300 with a fatal blow to the back of the head.
What demographic is Mr. Lee?
I don't know. I don't know. Yoren said that she saw an opportunity in Lee's case to use the restorative justice program introduced by the former Manhattan DA Cyrus Vance Jr., as reported by The Gothamist. I had a murder case where the defendant did not intentionally kill the victim, Yoren boasted during an online seminar. So this was one of her proud cases. And when I got I took the time to learn about the defendant, and I felt really incredibly sorry for him that he had gotten to that point in his life where he felt there was no choice but to commit this robbery and presumably to kill a man over $300. That's how much people's lives are worth to Daphne Yoren, apparently. So in this circumstance, she's able to say, "Oh, I feel bad for you."
Oh, shock.
Is Matthew Lee...
He's a black man.
I thought so. That's no surprise. So just another.
I heard restorative justice and my spidey senses tingled.
I heard Asian victim and my spider senses tingled.
All of that put together, there was a pattern forming, but it seems that we are undefeated as pattern recognizers, as always. Unsurprising. But yeah, so she does this for this guy, but Daniel Penny actually steps in to protect people, and she's like, right, I'm on this case. So, unsurprisingly, Alvin Bragg's New York, insane progressive assistant DAs and prosecutors going after good people, just trying to help the normal, innocent civilians of New York who want to just get on with their day, not feel threatened on the subway.
Well, his election was funded by Soros. So.
No, I'm not that surprised. But, it shouldn't be part and parcel of living in New York or any major city in America or the UK or Europe that you're just expected to be okay with feeling like you could be murdered at any moment.
They're not PvP servers, all right?
No, it's not that part of RuneScape, But, of course, now you get all of the bleeding hearts come out and say what should have happened. Well, he needed help. Jordan Neely needed help, and not a death sentence.
But he did
We're
get
failing people. We're failing people like him. But yeah, as you point out, he did get help. He refused the help, and there was nothing else that you could do about it. So what are you going to do? You just the law enforcement in New York seems to be perfectly fine with these kinds of insane vagrants on the streets threatening people. So of course in that situation, eventually, like what happens, you're going to get a Daniel Penny step in, try to protect people, not even actively try and hurt the person, just try to restrain him, and then because of a combination of psychosis, sickle cell, and massive amounts of drugs, you die.
Experiencing homelessness as well in the subtitle. Again, I just want to point out every single time, it's very insidious how they do this, because it sets man's basic state as the
as home,
as the state providing you a bloody mansion. Like, no, we don't pop fully formed out of the womb into a house.
Was that Locke or Rawls? Or was it Hobbes?
Rousseau, definitely.
Oh, it was Rousseau saying, in state of nature, man was automatically granted some kind of 2-story shitbox.
Yeah, quite. His bug consumption pod.
I don't remember that part.
So yeah.
I didn't read it. It was between the lines.
All the assumptions about anthropology are always baked in the subtitle and the article. Dismiss these nutcases out of hand.
Yeah, there you go. Everybody is entitled to social housing, at least in London, that's for sure. Black Lives Matter decided to weep about it. We need a world where empathy replaces fear and compassion replaces violence. How about where homeless people can't just freely abuse people on the subway, hey?
In a world that has some justice left in it, apparently.
That's really annoying on the train.
Yeah.
I would be really annoyed by that. Like, just... I hate it when people play
these egocentric freaks who just want to get attention from me. No, I'm not going to give you any money. Leave me alone.
If I wanted to listen to Michael Jackson, I have Spotify. Stop begging for my money that you're going to go spend on drugs.
It annoys me that people even answer the phone on the train, let alone anything else.
Also, BLM, you're irrelevant. No one cares. Go away. All of your prominent leaders sold out, bought their mansions, and moved on. Give it up. Nobody cares anymore. Protesters were on the streets doing exactly what you would expect, but guess what? No one cares.
There's like 10 of them.
Yeah, exactly. There's a fair few, but not enough because nobody cares anymore. Nobody cares. Everybody who has any sense has looked back at the George Floyd riots and gone, A, that was a disaster that hurt people, got people killed, and destroyed a lot of property. B, completely unjustified in the first place because anybody with sense goes, oh, well, he died of a fentanyl overdose. They don't believe that Derek Chauvin actually intentionally murdered him anymore.
Was Jordan Neely from Palestine? Because I just want to point out, there's a lot of kafirs and Palestine flags here. And it's weird that...
This must be that multiracial working class banding together that I hear about.
Of course.
Yeah, because it's strange because a former FBI guy traced all the phones at Kamala Harris rallies and they found out that all the crowds at her rallies had been to all of the other rallies. Loads of people coming from Mexico and Canada. And loads of people had also had their phones traced to BLM and Palestine marches.
Well, so like they were professional protesters being bussed about, maybe.
Yeah, like a renter mob. How curious that they get mobilised.
Yeah, that's funny how that happens, isn't it? Oh well, nothing to see here. Anyway, the NAACP, even more irrelevant than BLM these days, also did the exact same thing. But the most entertaining thing really was a BLM co-founder, I assume a regional co-founder, a man called Hawk Newsom, not related to Gavin as far as I'm aware,
or Tua,
decided that what we need in response to the law being upheld What we needed in response to the law being upheld was black vigilantes on the streets.
Just like everybody else has vigilantes, we need some black vigilantes.
That's right.
Isn't that just
People
prime?
wanna jump up and choke us and kill us for being loud.
Pretty sure
How
per
about we do the
capita there are
same
more black
when they
vigilantes
attempt to
than any
oppress
other
us.
group.
Right.
He's going like, you want 50%? We'll make it 60%. How about 70%?
But hang on, Tariq Nasheed informed Josh the logistics are impossible, so I think they need to convene the elders and discuss how this is going to happen.
Clearly, they're getting organised, okay? Logistically, it was only 50% so far, but with this kind of leadership, sky is the limit.
So jokes aside, that guy just said we want race war.
Basically, yes.
How do you have a country with these people?
You can't.
Yeah, so he needs to go to prison.
You can't. But they're... For all of the celebration and for everything good that's come out of this, for all of the entertainment, there is still a threat, which is going back to Jordan Neely's father, Andre Zachary, is going to try and take take Daniel Penny to civil court over a civil lawsuit for damages done. And I think if I scroll down here, he wants to damages for alleged physical assault and battery.
Okay, right.
So this is obviously an article that came out before the trial had finished, but I've looked and seen that after it, he is still seeking.
Yeah, he's
to
still
pursue this.
pursuing it.
So
Yeah.
you're trying to make money off your son's corpse when you didn't help him out when he was alive?
Yeah.
Right, you're scum.
But the American legal system does allow for something like this. So I imagine that it will go nowhere, but still, even if it goes nowhere, it'll be a very timely and a very costly route to nowhere. So I can only hope that this gets either nipped in the bud as soon as possible, or that Penny continues to receive the support when it goes to a civil case, because he's not out of the woods yet, folks. Because no matter what, this will end up costing more money. So if he needs more financial support and there are routes open to donate, absolutely support him in this.
Thanks for watching, folks. If you'd like to support us, go sign up to the website, £5 a month, or you could buy someone a premium gift subscription, which is a new feature that we have, and go and watch Bo's Epoch series on the rise of Vercingetorix. He's doing a very, very long and very, very detailed breakdown of the life of Julius Caesar. And of course, part 13 is Vercingetorix becoming the opposition, the Celtic opposition to Julius Caesar. I'm not going to spoil it. Go and watch that. And of course, go and follow us on X at lotuseaters_com for when we upload things and for more information.